Mayor, that was great. This city is coming back, right, against all odds. And from a Brookings perspective, we watch Detroit closely. We think this is the most important urban regeneration underway in the United States. So thanks to the mayor and to all the people here who are making this happen. Just another shout out to JPMorgan Chase. So we do a lot of these convenings, as John was saying, around the United States and outside the US, around global cities. For this particular convening, and you'll see this, JP enabled us to do deeper, more granular research around foreign direct investment in the city as well as the metro. So thanks to them for enabling us to do this. Quick quote from George Bernard Shaw. This is really an admonition and a warning. The sign of an educated person is to be deeply moved by statistics. Okay, now we can start. So some context. Good news, right? After the recession, we have seen the growth of private sector jobs. We're back to where we started in 2007. A bit troubling news is the country keeps growing, right? And because of population growth and labor market dynamics, we still have about 4 million missing jobs. So we've got a gap here that we have to make up, both here and across the country. The other major challenge is structural. It's not just cyclical. The U.S. is a very productive economy. Michigan, Southeast Detroit is a very productive economy. Output is growing, right? But wages are basically stagnating. So we have a challenge essentially in growing more jobs, but also in growing better jobs that pay better wages. So when you add all this up, just in simple numbers, the context, 81 million poor or near poor in 2000, 107 million in 2011. So that's the context. Some real tough structural issues in the US economy. That really brings us to this challenge we have, which is to transition from an economy pre-recession that was really characterized by consumption and debt to an economy that we're going to describe today, that is really fueled by innovation and powered by skilled workers and driven by global engagement, exports of goods and services out, foreign direct investment in. Why is there this imperative to engage globally for this city, for this metro, for this state, for our country? Well, it's because the world has just fundamentally changed, and you all know it. The share of global GDP of Brazil, India, and China in 2009, 21%. By 2018, it'll be up to 28%, okay? So the US share of global domestic product is dropping. We're still very strong, but we're really seeing these nations grow by leaps and bounds. This is a product of urbanization, first and foremost. Countries prosper when they urbanize because they can concentrate their assets in cities. 2009, we passed the Rubicon, 50% of the world population living in cities. In a relatively short period of time, we'll be at 60% global urban population. Here's the big shift that you need to think about, okay? Because most of the growth in the world is happening outside the United States. This is the share of the global middle class today. Watch where it's going. It is growing in Asia by leaps and bounds. As the US begins to think about our growth, we need to think about the growing middle class, particularly in India and China and other parts of Asia. So global engagement is the path to more and better jobs. It is the vehicle to dealing with those structural challenges I put up at the beginning. It has two components. It's foreign direct investment on one side, right? Companies either from outside the US buying our companies or building facilities here, or the export of our quality products and our quality services to the rest of the world. This is really important. Let's just describe it. Foreign direct investment, foreign companies, it's only about 5% of US employment, but they pay well. It is really important to understand when foreign companies come here, they're participating in these advanced parts of our economy, so critical to the wage issue. Global investment flows are growing substantially. You see where the US figures are here and next. Our share of global investment flows are, basically declining as the world grows. So we are in competition with the rest of the world for global capital. We're not alone in the world anymore. Everyone knows it here because you sit on the border with Canada. Let's look at exports. Every $1 billion increase in export supports another 5,000 jobs. Wage premiums, again, when you make quality products that you sell to the rest of the world, you get paid for it as an individual with skills, and you get better benefits as part of the track. Other challenge, we are not an export-oriented economy because we're such a big economy. Look at our competitors around the world, whether it's obviously emerging markets like China, hard to really call them an emerging market, or these other mature Western economies, whether it's Canada, Japan, or the EU. We are not exporting as much because we have traditionally looked inward for our growth. On manufacturing, we still do export. I mean, even though sometimes people talk about a post-industrial economy, we're $944 billion exports, last data we have. It's third in the world behind China and Germany, and they work at it, right? I mean, they fundamentally focus on production. On services, better, right? You can see the surplus that we have in services. So manufacturing, we're third. On services, we have a surplus. And then what's really important is that when we trade with Canada and we trade with Mexico, there's value add, there's US content in the goods we're buying from these places. They're really part of an integrated regional economy. When we trade with China or we trade with Europe, much less. So can we increase our competitiveness in global markets? That's really the issue today. It really depends on these industries that you excel at. These are the advanced industries that have large shares of research and development and large shares of workers with science, technology, engineering, and math skills. So when you just input R&D and skills, what you end up with 50 sectors of the US economy. 35 manufacturing, 3 energy, 12 services. These are the advanced industry sectors of our economy. They're not a lot of jobs as a portion of our economy. They're only about 9%, but they're 18% of our GDP. They're about 60% of our exports. They're knocking it out of the park on a whole other bunch of indicators. And post-recession, they're about a third of the recovery. You want to have advanced industries for growth, but also for wages. Like foreign direct investment, like exports, at every scale of education, whether it's the PhD brainiacs coming out of the University of Michigan or Wayne State, or whether it's people with high school skills or associate degrees, these jobs pay a wage premium. Again, when you're making quality products, providing quality services, you get paid for it. Advanced industries matter because they develop technology that transform lives, they drive productivity, they support long supply chains, and they stimulate local economies. And when you actually add the direct jobs in these firms and all the indirect jobs, the multiplier effect, they're a much bigger portion of our economy. Here's the challenge for Michigan, for Southeast Michigan, and for the United States. There are 3 things that you need. 3 things. It's nice to just boil it down. You need to power advanced industries. Innovation, skills, and infrastructure. Innovation, we've got some issues. A lot of other countries want to be like us. And the American model was to basically invest at scale in basic science and applied research. Guess what? We're beginning to fall behind a lot of other countries. On skills, it's even worse, much worse, because we walked away from vocational education. We walked away from apprenticeships. We told everyone get a 4-year degree and not focus on just the skills themselves, not necessarily the time in school. So we're behind a whole bunch of countries, and we need to catch up. And last piece, infrastructure. I don't know if you've noticed, we're fairly clogged and congested in this country. We have not invested in infrastructure, in roads, in bridges, in rail, as much as some of our competitor nations. So the question then is, how can we compete? The way to do it is through our metros, right? Our cities and metropolitan areas. This is the way we look at the United States. Top 100 metropolitan areas that after decades of growth make up 2/3 of our population, 3/4 of our GDP, and on every indicator that matters, it's innovation, skills, or infrastructure, are 75, 80, 85, 90% of the nation. For all intents and purposes, that's the United States. 47 out of 50 states have a majority of their GDP dominated by their metropolitan areas. A lot of the country still thinks of itself as rural. It's not. Metro exports, top 100 metros, and there are 400 total, they basically dominate our service exports and our manufacturing exports. In terms of what we actually sell to China, India, and Brazil, top 100 metros, again, 2/3 of the population, 68, 76, 78%. In terms of the movement of goods and people, right, this is even more dominated by our cities and metros, because this is where our airports are, our seaports are, our freight rail hubs. And in terms of foreign direct investment and in terms of advanced industry, again, dominance by these top 100 metropolitan areas. So let's focus on Michigan and on this metropolis. You're 44% of the population of the state, the Southeast Michigan. You're 47% of the GDP. And again, given some extra support from JP, we were able to dig a lot deeper. Some good news on exports, and this is not surprising given the presence of auto and transport here. You rank 14th in the United States, gross metropolitan product, but you're 8th in terms of the value of your exports, and you're really 8th in terms of export intensity. So you're prepared for global competition given your base, but you've been lagging. If you look at the slide on the right, you'll see the sort of big drop in 2009 in the recession. This is sort of that blue line just sort of plummeting, but you're coming back. FDI is a bigger challenge here. When we looked at the numbers, you're only 10th in the United States in terms of jobs, and you're about 46th out of the top 100 in terms of FDI intensity. And again, you've had some issues really attracting foreign direct investment. Like your exports, it tends to be focused in on motor vehicles and other good production, which tends to relate to the auto sector. The big spike in this metro, obviously, is Fiat's purchase of Chrysler. But put that aside, FDI has really been struggling in this region for some period of time. We then look at the city, and this is very rare in the United States. We tend to do most of our calculations at the metro level because that's the organic nature of the economy. But we looked at your city foreign direct investment employment, and that's struggling as well. You're ranked in terms of share of city employment in foreign-owned enterprises, 16th out of 20, and share of the metro jobs that are in the city, about 20 out of 20. You'll see how you rank up. Compared to what we would consider your peers on share of city employment or the city share of metro employment, you're not there yet. And that, obviously this reflects the broader issues in the city economy. If a city is generally struggling, it's not going to attract foreign direct investment, whether it's in manufacturing or whether it's in services. But this is now your new baseline. Because as the city revives, as it is reviving, these are the kind of metrics you want to use to sort of gauge your progress. As we go through the day, we're going to talk about the different parts of foreign direct investment for the city and for the metro. In many parts of the United States, a lot of foreign direct investment, this is on the left side of the slide, is in so-called greenfield investment. A foreign company, a German company, a Japanese company, a Chinese company comes and opens up a facility there. Okay, you don't have as much of that here. What you mostly have are mergers and acquisitions. A German company, a Japanese company comes and buys one of your companies, like Fiat bought Chrysler, right? So there's a little bit less greenfield investment and a little more merger and acquisition happening here. And this slide on the right basically shows that compared to the rest of the country, you don't have as much foreign direct investment in middle market jobs, right? And that's a really key part of the economy, from 51 job companies with 51 jobs up to 500, because that's where a lot of our growth is. So there's some issues here, there are some challenges here, but again, the point of this is not to bemoan and to wallow, it's to give you a baseline off of which to work. Okay, how do you go about your business now? There is a way forward here, and it's a way forward that's being practiced by other cities and metros. And here's how they're engaging. First, very purposeful efforts at the city and metro scale to catalyze trade and investment. How do you do this? You basically run the numbers, right? You figure out who you are and you do it on purpose. This is not a rocket science. This is where evidence really matters. Detroit is not Denver. You know, Cincinnati is not Charlotte. You need to know who you are so that you can begin to export out, attract foreign investment in. We've worked very closely with San Diego over the last several years, and it's a whole bunch of different organizations in San Diego, within the city, within the metro, within sectors, within universities. This is the collaborate to compete notion. So you basically run the evidence on what your starting point is in your broader global economy, and then you work together across jurisdictions, across sectors, across disciplines to leverage up. The second thing is you invest in what matters, right? And again, going back to what I said before, three things really, really matter. Innovation. You can look to SUNY Albany, which is investing in advanced research around nanotech. You can look to Columbus, Ohio, which is around applied research. On human capital, you can look to these really interesting models that are emerging in New York and other places around 9 through 14 on STEM. And on infrastructure, you could look to many of other southern states. And you're doing this, obviously, in terms of your relationship with Canada. But public-private finance around large-scale infrastructure around trade and logistics. So there is a playbook out there, and Port Miami is just really, I think, probably the vanguard of where we're going on some of this infrastructure. Network globally. At the end of the day, the world is evolving as a network of trading cities. You produce quality products, you provide quality services. In the end, you sell them to certain cities around the world, not to nations, to cities and metros, because they're the economy. Last year, we took Chicago to Mexico City and vice versa, because Chicago and Mexico City are essentially joined at the hip as economies because of this deep cultural relationship, but because of the trade flows back and forth. So as we go forward with this work, and as you go forward with your own efforts to catalyze trade and investment, the key is not just to understand who you are, but who are your partners around the world, in Europe, in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America, and obviously within our own continent. Because in the way, that's how trade's going to evolve. This is the mayor of Chicago signing a trade pact with the mayor of Mexico City. We usually think of trade pacts as between presidents of nations, but in the 21st century, it's between mayors, business leaders, universities, incubators, and so forth. Listen to this as a final notion of where we're headed. The foundation of cities has always been trade. 2,000 years ago, the Silk Road linked cities from China to the Roman Empire. The world is now being remade as a network of globalizing metros. that trade together based on distinctive clusters of firms, specialized expertise, and cultural affinity. San Jose, Bangalore, and Seoul are technology hubs. Portland, Copenhagen, and Curitiba focus on green industry. Detroit, Stuttgart, Monterrey, and Nagoya are linked by manufacturing. Metros that connect by trade grow and prosper together. So get a passport, find your trading partners, travel the new Silk Road. Let me just end with this proposition. When we look at the American economy today, post-recession, it's very important to think about the disruptive dynamics post-recession. Southeast Michigan and Detroit seem particularly well positioned because you're obviously very strong on production and manufacturing. That's your history, that's your legacy. But it's not your parents' manufacturing. Manufacturing is the most technologically sophisticated super sector of the American economy. This is where the patents are. This is where the Internet of Things is happening. Cars are computers on wheels, essentially. If you can begin to reimagine your economy in a 21st century way and begin to think about the potential to really trade not just from the big companies, but small and medium-sized enterprises out to your partners and begin to attract investment in, this is going to be a place that has a very, very, very good run for its money. But it's by focusing on these fundamentals of what matters in the economy today and then by investing at scale in the levers of competitiveness. Thank you very much. I look forward to the conversation.